So the difference between fact and truth is uh, is it's like fact is kind of, man, fact is like obvious, like scientific, verifiable information. It's just information. It's not true or false. It's just information that's actually there. Uh, the wavelength of light, the whatever the wavelength of light is coming from the sun, that's a fact, but it doesn't give us any truth about the world around us. So, uh, fact is just information that's actual and verifiable. Truth is like applying those facts in a way so that your application is also factual. And this guy's doesn't make any claims. He writes it like a news story. Um, but he very heavily implies a lot of things, like the fact that these, like he never states that we should regulate, like bubble pack, FRS, and personal radio service radios. But it's heavily implied, like we should be regulating these things, we should be monitoring these things. Um, but based on what? Like he says the fact that all these militias are using these radios, and it gives this impression in your mind that that oh my gosh, all these right-wing extremist groups are using these radios to do all these violent things. He said the most obvious, and it's guilt by association. One of the examples he gives is the KKK. The KKK used citizen band radio in the 1960s to he the in the 1960s to for logistics, to communicate and coordinate their movements and the things that they were doing. And he says directly that that is a part of the right-wing extremist history of radio. Except that in the 1960s, they didn't have cell phones. The only portable communication equipment anybody had was CB, and the stuff was everywhere. Cars, like there were so many movies about about CB radios. Smokey and the Bandit was a big hit movie about a guy who just spent all of his time on a CB radio. He used it like a cell phone. Um, CB radios were everywhere. So that's something you need to point out. And then that hasn't changed. CB radios are still used all over the place now. Bubble pack FRS radios are, you can buy them at Walmart, um, and people use them all the time. GMRS radios are widely available, cheap. People use them for hunting. People use them on boats, uh, and they say that, oh well, these these things shouldn't be available to people without being monitored. Um, and it's like he creates this sense of fear throughout the radio. Um, Throughout this whole article about radios, he creates this overall arching sense of fear, and that's the untruth. There's nothing scary about radios. There's nothing clandestine about radios. When you push the talk button on a radio, I don't care what radio it is, whether it's ham radio, whether it's FRS radio, whether it's PRS radio, whether it's GMRS radio, you hit that talk button, everything you say goes to the whole world. Everybody can hear everything you say. All they got to do is have the right radio with the right channel. Now, if you're talking bubble pack radios, every single radio that you can buy at Walmart has a scan feature. The police can just spend $8 on a bubble pack radio from Amazon, set that in their car, put it on scan, and you're not going to say anything that the police aren't going to hear. All right, everything is out there. The same thing applies to GMRS. It is cheap and easy to scan, set up a scan feature. And let me see, where's that part in the article where they talked about black, uh, SEC, self-policing, auxiliaries, there's too many hands out there, blah, blah, blah. Hammer itself, look at cheap, effective reuse. Alright. So, since the radios can be programmed to any frequency within their limits, some, quote, unused, unquote, or black frequencies can be used, which would be very unlikely to be monitored by the FCC or ham operators. First of all, again, FCC doesn't really monitor communications. Nice. So, FCC doesn't really monitor communications anyway, unless there's something, again, like somebody doing something big like pirate radio. But you can set any of those radios to scan on all of those frequencies, and it's not that hard. 5-10 minutes of programming with somebody who spent a minute and a half on YouTube learning how to do it. You can set up a radio to scan all those frequencies. You can set up a team of guys, 4 or 5 people. It'd take maybe a couple of hours of setup, and have all of those, have one guy scanning 10 channels, another guy scanning 10 channels, on down the line. And it's like, it scans through so fast that you're not going to be able to transmit anything without somebody hitting your thing and then hitting your frequency. And then here's another interesting. So VexCXO, thank you. He just dropped a link in the Discord. I'm gonna bring this up over here. Does it have it? Yeah. This right here is a software-defined radio. This thing is $40 on Amazon. You plug this sucker into a laptop and it picks up every radio transmission on every single frequency everywhere within range. You set up one of these things, all you have to do is, I can actually have the software on here somewhere. I believe I might have deleted it when I reinstalled Windows. Let's see if I can find the software. Let's see. Chirp, Discord, apps and element. I'm glad. It's just, there we go. HDSDR. This is software-defined radio. Let's see if I can. I'm going to kill that desktop audio. All I have to do, right there, that's picking up the signal coming from my microphone. That's not even a radio signal. You can pick up all kinds of electronic interference, electronic transmission of all kinds. So software-defined radio, like all that talk about how you can't monitor it, you can put that little thing up. Just look across the screen for where it's turning a slightly different color of yellow or green and be like, oh, somebody's transmitting right around there, and drop right in on it and pick up everything they're saying, and 2 seconds flat across every single radio frequency on the spectrum, from HF ham radio all the way to UHF, ultra high frequency military comms, 3G traffic, cell phone traffic. You pick it all up with SDR for $40. It's not this big scary thing that nobody can monitor. It is the most difficult thing to secure on the planet. Very few people use secure radio. The military does, and large businesses that can afford massive encryption. Let me tell you, massive military encryption is not easy. Businesses use it. but they usually use like something like a Motorola encryption provided by the Motorola company. They don't use their own encryption because radio encryption is incredibly difficult and it requires a lot of logistics to take care of. Some dude with some radio, in his basement is probably not using 256-bit radio encryption that the FBI can't crack, or any encryption at all. So, just basically what this guy in this article is doing is providing he's providing like this impression that there's something that you need to fear, and therefore the government should regulate it. Um, yeah, yeah. Oh, it's not letting me scroll. Yeah. Uh, the, yeah. So Vexiax says the weirdo in a coffee shop with a backpack could pick up everything if they're clever. Meshtastic. Uh, well, yeah, that's getting into a little bit more in the weeds on radio, but that's true too about Meshtastic. Um, but the point is he's creating something for you to fear so that we can regulate it. And he needs an excuse to regulate. Um, and it's just not something to be afraid of. It's not something that's slipping past the goalie. It's not something that is super difficult to monitor as is. Um, it just isn't something to be as afraid of as that guy is implying. Um, and so that's kind of the point I wanted to make. Really, is this, the difference between fact and truth is that that article talks a lot about facts, things that are factual, things that actually happen, things that exist, things that people actually do. Um, but he, throughout it, he heavily implies that there's something to be afraid of here. That he implies that the KKK was using radio, in this special way. Like, I mean, the KKK, modern KKK uses cell phones. We use cell phones. The Proud Boys use cell phones. Uh, yeah, like the reason a lot of those people were probably advising using radios probably had nothing to do with being monitored. It had to do with decentralization. And that has more to do with the fact that they were going to be in DC when tens of thousands of people were going to be in the streets protesting and watching the speeches and all that stuff. If you've ever been in a highly crowded area, cell phone towers actually get jammed, and then you've got no service, no communication. You can barely send text messages. You've got no data. You can overwhelm the yeah. Yeah, and Vexy says the cell towers were being weird that day due to so many people being there. Um, the place where I used to work, had 20,000 employees, and they all went to lunch at the same time. That whistle blew. Uh, uh, that whistle blew at noon. Everybody, everybody's cell phone data just crashed because everybody was on their cell phone from noon to 12:30 at the exact same time every single day. Uh, so people preparing and taking radios isn't some big vast right-wing conspiracy that needs to be cracked down on by the government. It's just people preparing for not having cell phone service. And yes, maybe or maybe not, those people were right-wing extremists. But that's the Hitler ate food argument. We shouldn't eat food because Hitler ate food. We should ban the use of radios because right-wing extremists are using radios. Uh, you okay, Scooter? I mean, uh, right-wing extremists also wear clothes, and they have sex. Maybe we should stop having sex. Yeah, this is one of those things. Radios are everywhere. You can get You can get a 2-pack of radios at Walmart for $20. They're absolutely everywhere, and the fact that right-wing extremists use them is is an inescapable fact because literally everyone uses them. Right-wing extremists, right-wing non-extremists, left-wing non-extremists, extreme centrists, center right, center left, people that couldn't spell politics if it was written down on a sheet of paper in front of them. All kinds of people use radios, and it's not this big scary thing that is going to successfully overthrow the government. Oh man, a sweet advertisement. And they got like this nice little scary looking dude in a ball cap. Uh, yeah. So this brings me to the next kind of point I want to make about this is that we have this weird, our political nomenclature in America has gotten kind of weird because we talk about, is that actually, no, that's going to be your right. Yeah, this is going to be so backwards. Left versus right. You got the left versus the right, left wing, right wing, liberals, conservatives, and in theory, the left are the people that don't want oppression, and the right are the people that do want oppression, and that's just not the way that we're. I mean, like if you look at the technical definitions of left and right, politically speaking, now you're talking right wing is more authoritarian, left wing is more anarchist. Um, but if you look at the kind of things people like this are talking about, um, the people, oh geez, I just lost my train of thought. Gosh. So anyway, the people that write articles like this consider themselves left wing, yet this whole article was just a plea for regulation, saying we need to monitor this, we need to regulate this, we need to create laws about this. And I mean, I'm sorry, but that is authoritarianism. This guy would consider himself probably a liberal, would probably consider himself a leftist, and yet he's writing this long article where all he does is give evidence and state a case for regulation and more laws and more government monitoring of you. Well, not you, if you're one of those liberals that that clicked on for my clickbait title, but of course you're not actually here. But when this goes up on YouTube, maybe somebody will jump in with uh, and watch this and be like, oh, but yeah, if you're a liberal and every 10 minutes you're clamoring about making laws to crack down on the FCC, or laws about what people can say on Twitter, or laws about hate speech, or laws about what you can and can't do in certain places, and what you can and can't tell people to do inside your own business or in your own home or your own bakery or whatever. Every single time you make a law that limits what people could do, that is by definition authoritarian. You're using your authority to tell people how to live their lives. So we have this weird nomenclature in this country where we say you've got, left-wing liberals and right-wing conservatives, but really you have right-wing liberals and right-wing conservatives. And then you also have left-wing liberals and left-wing conservatives. The further you go left, if you want to get technical, the further you go left is anarchist. Further you go right is totalitarian. But in reality, that's not how our system works. We have some totalitarian conservatives, I guess. I haven't ever met one. most conservatives just want people to be left alone and park their dong wherever they want and just, you know, don't tell people what to do on their own property. That's most conservatives I know. But I'm sure they're out there. Most liberals I know want the government to tell me whether or not I should be able to take a vaccine. Want the government to tell me whether or not I should be able to say certain things on Twitter. You know, and I'm sorry, but that's right wing. So this far right extremist groups in that list is Antifa. Antifa is a far right extremist group. So is Black Lives Matter. They're they're a far right extremist group. They're Marxist. They said so on their website. So, you know, yeah, we should be cautious of right wing extremists, whether they're liberal right wingers or conservative right wingers. Anybody who's extreme about anything, you should keep a dubious eye on. But walkie talkies, they're not extreme, they're mainstream. That's pretty much all I got to say. Probably said it pretty badly, but maybe we'll get better with time.